June 17, 1775, dawned over the misty hills surrounding Boston, and the world was about to witness a battle that would become both a symbol of courage and a lesson in the harsh realities of revolution. The Battle of Bunker Hill, fought primarily on Breed's Hill, was one of the earliest and bloodiest engagements of the American Revolutionary War, yet its story is far more complex than the familiar narrative of patriotic heroism suggests. Beneath the tales of valor lies a battlefield of missteps, confusion, and strategic lessons that history often glosses over, making Bunker Hill a fascinating chapter in America's fight for independence. The background to the battle is crucial to understanding its significance. These militias were a mix of farmers, tradesmen, and townspeople who had taken up arms, inspired by a desire for autonomy, representation, and freedom from what they saw as oppressive British rule. They were poorly trained, poorly equipped, and largely inexperienced in formal warfare, yet they were fiercely determined. The colonial forces, led by leaders such as William Prescott, realized that controlling the high ground overlooking Boston was essential to holding the city and forcing the British to rethink their strategy. The British, under General Thomas Gage and later reinforced by General William Howe, were professional soldiers with extensive experience in European warfare. They were confident in their ability to crush a poorly trained militia, yet they underestimated the resolve of the colonists and the strategic advantage provided by the hills surrounding Boston. Bunker Hill, along with nearby Breed's Hill, offered commanding views of the city and harbor, making it a critical position for artillery placement. The colonists hastily fortified Breed's Hill, constructing earthworks, trenches, and a makeshift redoubt overnight, demonstrating both ingenuity and an understanding of defensive tactics. The battle began in the early morning hours when British forces, numbering around 2,200 men, advanced under the cover of fog toward the colonial positions. The Americans, approximately 1,200 strong, held the high ground and had prepared for an assault. Despite their inexperience, they were disciplined enough to follow a simple but deadly strategy: hold fire until the enemy was close, then unleash devastating volleys of musket fire. This tactic maximized the impact of their limited ammunition and demonstrated a keen understanding of battlefield psychology. As the British advanced, waves of soldiers marched toward the redoubt. The colonists, under the command of Prescott, waited patiently. The British were initially shocked by the accuracy and intensity of the militia's fire. Officers were killed, and troops faltered under the unexpected resistance. For 2 grueling assaults, the British were repelled, suffering significant casualties. Yet the Americans were not invincible. Their ammunition was limited, and their lines could not hold indefinitely against repeated, organized attacks by trained soldiers. By the 3rd assault, the colonists were overwhelmed, and the redoubt was finally captured. Despite the British victory, the Battle of Bunker Hill was a Pyrrhic one. British forces suffered over 1,000 casualties, including around 226 killed and hundreds wounded, making it one of the bloodiest battles of the war at that point. Colonial losses were roughly 450, including about 140 killed. The disproportionate British losses stunned both sides and demonstrated that the revolutionaries, though poorly equipped and inexperienced, could stand up to the professional British army. This outcome had profound psychological effects. It boosted colonial morale, galvanized support for the rebellion, and forced British commanders to reassess their assumptions about the ease of suppressing the revolt. One aspect that history often obscures is the internal confusion and chaos during the battle. The colonists were not a unified fighting force in the modern sense. Communication breakdowns, fear, and exhaustion played major roles in the engagement. Some militias fled or hesitated, and not all leaders coordinated perfectly. Similarly, the British faced challenges in maneuvering heavy forces up a narrow hill under fire. These human elements, panic, improvisation, and split-second decision-making, were as critical to the battle's outcome as strategy or numbers. It's a reminder that war is messy, unpredictable, and influenced by the human condition as much as by tactics or plans. The Battle of Bunker Hill also revealed the emerging tactical sophistication of the American forces. While much of the fighting was conventional musket volleys, the colonists demonstrated an understanding of entrenchment, field fortifications, and the psychological impact of firepower. They chose their positions deliberately, fortified them effectively with limited resources, and leveraged terrain to multiply their combat effectiveness. These lessons would echo throughout the Revolutionary War, influencing engagements from Saratoga to Yorktown, and establishing a model for colonial militias facing superior forces. Cultural memory has tended to emphasize heroism over complexity. Figures such as Colonel Prescott became symbols of patriotism and steadfastness, while tales of soldiers marching up Breed's Hill under fire captured the imagination of later generations. Yet the reality was grimmer and more nuanced. The colonists' success in inflicting heavy casualties came at great cost, and their eventual retreat highlighted both the limitations and vulnerabilities of militia forces. Understanding these details enriches our perspective on the revolution, emphasizing not only courage, but the strategic, logistical, and psychological factors that shaped early American warfare. Bunker Hill also had long-term consequences for the Revolutionary War. It proved that the British could be checked, and that American forces were capable of standing up in battle. This emboldened the colonies politically, encouraging enlistment, local support, and funding for the growing revolutionary effort. It also signaled to European powers, including France and Spain, that the American rebellion was serious and potentially viable, planting seeds for international support later in the war. Moreover, the battle challenged contemporary assumptions about the nature of military power. Numerical superiority, training, and traditional European tactics were not sufficient to guarantee victory. Terrain, morale, preparation, and innovative use of available resources proved equally decisive. The Battle of Bunker Hill reminds us that revolutions are won not only on the battlefield, but in the minds of people, through belief, courage, and the willingness to endure hardship for a cause. Historians have also debated the strategic decisions made on both sides. Could the colonists have held the hill longer with better supply lines? Should the British have attacked differently to minimize casualties? These questions illustrate the complexity of the battle and challenge simple narratives of heroism or failure. Bunker Hill was not merely a victory or defeat. It was a crucible in which tactics, leadership, and human endurance were tested to the limit. Today, the site of Bunker Hill, near modern Boston, is a place of memory and reflection. The iconic Bunker Hill Monument commemorates the soldiers who fought and died, and it reminds visitors of the human cost of revolution. Archaeological and historical research continues to shed light on the realities of the engagement, from the placement of fortifications to the composition of forces. Each discovery adds nuance to the story, revealing how ordinary people faced extraordinary circumstances and shaped the destiny of a nation. The story of Bunker Hill is ultimately a lesson in courage, resilience, and strategic thinking. It shows that even underdogs can challenge the mightiest empires with preparation, determination, and tactical insight. It reminds us that history is often more complex than the stories we inherit, and that real-life battles are filled with uncertainty, improvisation, and human emotion. Understanding what history tried to hide about Bunker Hill, chaos, fear, improvisation, and unexpected tactical brilliance, provides a richer, more meaningful perspective on the American Revolution. So, if you want to uncover more hidden truths, explore the battles that shaped the world, and learn about the courage, strategy, and humanity behind history's pivotal moments, hit that like button, leave a comment about what surprised you most about Bunker Hill, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's most astonishing events. Because the story of Bunker Hill is not just about a single battle. It is about the birth of a nation, the resilience of ordinary people, and the lessons that continue to inspire generations today.